You're sitting in your Harvard dorm room at 2 in the morning, staring at an email draft you haven't sent yet. It's January 2004. The cursor blinks. Outside, Cambridge is frozen. Inside, your screen is the only light. The email says you're still working on it. It says you've hit some technical complications. It says you'll have something to show them soon. Every word of it is a lie. What Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss and Divya Narendra don't know is that you've been logging into their server for 2 months. You took their password at a handshake in a dining hall in November. You said yes, you shook on it, and then you went back to your room and started building something else entirely. You hit send. It buys you 1 more day, maybe 2, maybe enough. Here's what that email will eventually cost you: $65 million to make disappear. Not because you were proven guilty, because you were willing to pay to avoid the question being asked. But right now, none of that has happened. Right now, you're 19 years old, and you have a server and a window and a version of a company that doesn't exist yet. You're not thinking about lawsuits. You're thinking about what happens if you launch first. This is the story of the handshake. Everyone you made and everyone you broke. To understand what happened in that dorm room, you have to understand what you were before it. Face Mash. October 2003, built in one night. A website pulling student photos from Harvard's databases without permission, letting users rate them side by side. It crashed the network within hours. 4,000 votes in the first 4 hours. The administration threatened action. What you noticed wasn't the backlash. It was the number. People abandoned their Friday nights to click through faces of their classmates. Given the right interface, people will choose connection over privacy every time. You filed it away. You kept building. November 2003. 3 upperclassmen in the Kirkland House dining hall. Cameron Winklevoss, Tyler Winklevoss, Divya Narendra. They have an idea. Harvard connection, exclusive to Harvard, real identities, verified trust. They need a developer to finish the backend. Someone like you. They offer access, their server, their code base, their credentials. You shake hands. You say yes. You say yes because the idea is actually good. Real names, Harvard exclusivity, trust through identity. That part is sharp. And you know it's right because you've been thinking about the same problem from a different angle for months. That's the part you don't tell them. You take the password, you go back to your room. The handshake is made. What happens next determines everything. You're logged into their server. Late November 2003. The Harvard Connection codebase is open in front of you. Database schema, user table structure, authentication flow. Narendra has been building it carefully. It could launch in weeks with the right push. Here is the exact moment. Not the dining hall, not the email you'll send in January. Here, their code on your screen and yours in the window behind it. Your version is different, cleaner, faster, built around a social graph rather than a profile directory, designed to scale beyond a single university. Theirs is a Harvard site. Yours is something that could be everywhere. You already know they can't coexist. In a race between 2 nearly identical ideas, the one that launches first defines the category. The second becomes a footnote. A lawsuit. If you finish Harvard Connection and then launch the Facebook, they have prior claim. And they won't be entirely wrong, so you make the decision. Not dramatically, you close their tab, you open yours, and you start sending emails that say you're working on it while you're not. Technical complications, busy with coursework, almost there. The handshake is technically still in place. You haven't quit. You haven't told them you're building your own version. You've simply decided which code gets written at night and which emails go out in the morning. It's not the lie that makes this irreversible. It's the choice underneath the lie. The choice to let them believe they have a developer when what they have is a competitor. You knew. That's the part no settlement will ever change. You need to talk about Eduardo Saverin because this is the betrayal people don't talk about enough. The Winklevosses are a business dispute. Eduardo is something closer to a wound. You've known Eduardo since freshman year. He matches your intensity without competing with it. His own financial instincts, his own ambitions, no interest in outcoding you. He made real money trading Brazilian currency futures. He's not a rival. He's trying to build something alongside you. Late December 2003, you bring him in as co-founder. 30% of the company, CFO title. He writes the first check, $1,000 for the servers. Then another. By launch, he's put in $19,000, handed over without a contract or a lawyer. Nothing more formal than the handshake you gave him over dinner. What he doesn't know is that you've already started thinking of his role as temporary. Not because he's failing, because the company he wants to build and the one you want to build are fundamentally different. Eduardo believes in sustainable revenue, a business that earns what it spends. You believe in growth at any cost. Scale first, money later, get big fast enough that the business model becomes optional. Both philosophies are legitimate. They can't coexist at the top of the same company. You already know which one you're choosing. When Eduardo shakes your hand and calls you his partner, you mean it. He believed in you when it was genuinely risky. That means something. What it doesn't mean is that you'll think of him the same way in a year. The handshake you made with Eduardo was made by a version of you that hadn't yet met Sean Parker. And Sean Parker is coming. February 4th, 2004. You flip the switch, the Facebook goes live, and within the first hour, 300 Harvard students have registered. By the end of the day, 1,200. By the end of the week, half the campus. People aren't just signing up, they're coming back, checking it between classes, between meals, at 2 in the morning. The hook isn't the features, it's the real names, the real faces, the fact that the person across the dining hall is on here, and you can look at their profile and know exactly who they are. You'd bet everything on that insight. You were right. Within a week, you're at Yale. Columbia is asking, Stanford is next. Exclusive access, invitation only. Scarcity creating exactly the demand you'd predicted. By March, 10,000 users. By June, 100,000. The numbers climb faster than you can process them. The Winklevoss twins email the week of launch. You finally tell them what you decided in November. That you're too busy with your own project, that you can't help them anymore. The email is polite, almost apologetic. What it is, functionally, is the first public acknowledgement that the handshake is over. They write back. They're not polite. Eduardo is thrilled watching the traffic climb, working on advertising pitches, flying to New York to meet potential partners. He's doing exactly what you asked him to do. The CFO of a company that is, by any reasonable measure, starting to work. What he doesn't know is that working isn't enough. You need inevitable. And the person who's going to teach you the difference is about to walk through the door. Sean Parker arrives in the spring of 2004 like a translation of a language you already spoke but hadn't found words for. 24 years old, Napster, Plaxo, sued by record labels, pushed out of his own companies. None of it dimmed him. He finds the Facebook before most people know to look, reaches out through a mutual contact, and over dinner tells you something that reframes everything. You're not building a Harvard website. You're building the social graph of the internet, the underlying architecture of human connection online. Monetize too early, scale too slowly, and in 10 years you'll have a website instead of an infrastructure. You feel it land the way true things land, not a new idea. Confirmation. Parker moves to Palo Alto. You follow. The summer of 2004, you, Parker, early employees, moving at a speed that makes the dorm room feel like a warm-up. Peter Thiel writes a check for $500,000 in June. The company is incorporating in Delaware, restructuring equity, transforming into something Eduardo didn't sign up to run. Eduardo is still in New York, doing what you asked, trusting the handshake. But the restructuring paperwork is in language he doesn't fully understand because you haven't explained it. What the company needs now, Parker tells you, is a CFO who thinks like a venture-backed startup. Eduardo wants breaks. He doesn't understand that in Silicon Valley, the revenue model is the last thing you figure out. The handshake you made with Eduardo was real when you made it. What changed isn't your word. What changed is your definition of what the company is. That's what you tell yourself. Later, in depositions, you'll have to tell it to lawyers instead. Here is what actually happened. reconstructed from depositions, court filings, and testimony. In the spring of 2005, Facebook incorporates in Delaware under a new structure that includes provisions for issuing additional shares. Eduardo signs the documents. What they allow, in legal language Eduardo signs without fully parsing, is for his ownership stake to be reduced when new shares are issued. New shares are issued. His 34% becomes less than 10, then less than 5. He's in New York when it happens, opening a Facebook office, doing business development, still believing the company will recognize his work. The dilution paperwork clears in California, signed by you, approved by a board Eduardo is not on. He finds out when someone mentions a number that doesn't match the number in his head. He does the math. The math doesn't work. He calls you. The call does not go well. Your position, then and now. The company needed to grow. New investors required new equity. Eduardo's unwillingness to engage with the California operations limited his role. All technically accurate. What it doesn't capture is what Eduardo experienced. The person who shook his hand and called him co-founder and took his $19,000 used legal documents he didn't fully understand to erase what the handshake was supposed to guarantee. Eduardo Saverin files suit in 2009. The case settles under a non-disclosure agreement. What is publicly known, his name was restored to the company website as co-founder, a title that had been quietly removed, and his financial stake was partially returned. What cannot be disclosed because the NDA holds is whether you ever said you were sorry. The handshake Eduardo gave you was the most expensive one you ever received. The one you gave him back was the one that cost him the most. September 2004. The Winklevoss twins and Divya Narendra file suit. Their argument is straightforward. You signed on to build their platform, accessed their code under that agreement, then used the time you were supposed to spend on Harvard Connection to build a competitor instead. Misappropriation, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud. Your lawyers, independent development, coincidental timing, an unprotectable idea. What the lawsuit forces into the public record is the email chain. Every working on it, every almost there, every vague technical excuse. Now an exhibit in a federal case. The timestamps, the content, the gap between what you said and what you did, documented, dated, submitted to a court. You're 20 years old and already in federal litigation over a company that hasn't turned a profit. The proceedings drag across years. Neither side wants a trial because trial means a verdict, and a verdict means a public ruling on whether what you did was theft. Neither side wants that ruling. February 2008. You settle $65 million in cash and Facebook stock, sealed behind a non-disclosure agreement. The Winklevosses sign, the case closes. Then 2011. The twins come back. During the 2008 negotiations, they claim Facebook's internal valuation documents showed a company worth far more than you disclosed. The stock they accepted was priced using numbers you controlled, and they couldn't independently verify. The settlement itself, they argue, was negotiated in bad faith. The Ninth Circuit rejects the appeal. Sophisticated parties, the court holds, enter settlements knowing they're giving up the right to discover what they might have learned at trial. The deal is the deal. The handshake meant to end the dispute is itself disputed, and still holds. Barely. You sit in depositions for hours. The questions never change. What did you know? When did you know it? What did you take? The lawyers have the emails, the server logs, the timestamps showing your logins to Harvard Connection during the months you were supposed to be building it. Your lawyers build a different case. No protectable idea, no shared code, competition, not theft. Both portraits contain true things. That's what makes them so expensive. The Winklevoss settlement, $65 million, February 2008. NDA sealed. No admission of wrongdoing. The question the lawsuit asked, did you steal this? Answered, not by a judge, but by a wire transfer. The Eduardo settlement, undisclosed amount, NDA sealed. His name restored to the website as co-founder. His stake partially returned. The specifics gone behind confidentiality clauses that will hold indefinitely. What you've bought is not innocence. The courts never ruled on innocence. What you've bought is silence. Formal, contractual, legally enforceable silence from people paid enough to stop asking the question out loud. Silence has a shape. $65 million has a shape. A restored co-founder title has a shape. These are not the shapes of a dispute where nothing happened. You paid for quiet. You got it. Here's what the movie didn't show. The Winklevoss twins tried to undo the settlement in 2011, and their argument wasn't about the money. It was about the handshake inside the settlement itself. Their claim before the Ninth Circuit, during the 2008 negotiations, Facebook's internal valuation documents showed a company worth far more than what was disclosed. The stock component of the $65 million was priced on numbers they couldn't independently verify. The settlement meant to end the question of good faith was, they claimed, itself negotiated in bad faith. They were arguing you deceived them twice. Once when you were supposed to be building their site. Once when you were supposed to be settling the case. The Ninth Circuit rejected the appeal. Sophisticated parties, Judge Kosinski wrote, enter settlements knowing they give up the right to discover what they might have learned at trial. They had lawyers, they made a deal. The court will not unpeel a settlement because one party feels they left money on the table. Stripped of the legal language, the law does not require that every handshake be honest. It only requires that once you've agreed to a settlement, you live with it. The underlying conduct, the thing the original lawsuit was actually about, remains unruled upon. The question is still open. It will always be open. You don't win by being found innocent. You win by making sure the verdict is never rendered. Facebook crosses 1 billion users in 2012, 2 billion in 2017. Meta in 2021 passed 3 billion. The most successful social network in human history, and the central promise it makes to every one of those users is the same one it made to the 1,200 Harvard students on February 4th, 2004. Your real name, your real face, your real connections. Authentic identity. Trust through transparency. The platform you built on broken handshakes became the world's most powerful argument for honesty online. The reason real identity worked is precisely because you understood how much people will give up to feel accurately seen. You built a machine that answered a genuine human need, built it in ways that changed how billions of people experience connection, memory, relationships. You were also not honest. The platform's foundation and its promise are in permanent contradiction. Every time Facebook asks someone to verify their identity, it asks them to participate in a system of trust built on the specific violation of trust. The real names policy, the community standards on authentic representation, all of it stands on a foundation that court records, NDAs, settlement payments, and deposition transcripts describe in significant and damning detail. You were not wrong that you had the better product. You were not wrong that you were the one who could build it. The world where the Winklevosses finish Harvard connection and Facebook never exists is a meaningfully worse world in some ways. What remains is a question the courts never answered. You know what the handshake meant when you broke it. You knew in January 2004, staring at that email, you know now. And the platform that will carry your name asks 3 billion people every day to do the one thing you couldn't manage in a Harvard dining hall in the fall of 2003. Be who you say you are. Maybe the platform was always an attempt to build the world you couldn't inhabit. Or maybe you just built what you built, and the irony accrued on its own. The way compound interest accrues, quietly, until the number is too large to ignore. You made a handshake in a dining hall. You broke it before the plates were cleared. Everything after, the lawsuits, the settlements, the billions, the rebrands, is just the shape of what it cost to build an empire on a promise you were never planning to keep. If this video hit different, like it, share it, and subscribe to POV Intel. New video every week. There are 1,000 more worlds like this one. You haven't been inside any of them yet.